What's up?
What's going on, man?
That pork you just made was amazing.
Yeah, I've been smoking it all day, so it turned out pretty good. Let me put my phone on Do Not Disturb.
Right.
Do Not Disturb. There we go.
So, this is Aaron Crow, my father. What's the name of your podcast? Just a little plug.
Yeah, I have a cyber security podcast called Protect It All, where I talk about IT and OT cybersecurity stuff. I've been doing this stuff a long time, working in critical infrastructure, so I do a podcast on that. And then my friend Neil Conlon and I have a podcast. It's called Omnis Rising. So we talk about what it means to be a man and being a better man and a father and running a business and all that kind of fun stuff.
Right. So I kind of want to start from the beginning and at like ground zero.
Okay.
Aaron at my age, 15, 10. What was 15-year-old Aaron into?
15-year-old Aaron. I grew up in East Texas. I moved to Dallas area when I was about 5. I went to it was a small town that I grew up in called Forney, and you know that. You grew up there before we moved here. And I went to the same school from kindergarten until I graduated high school. Different buildings, but basically 3 different buildings: elementary school, middle school, and high school. At 15, that'd be sophomore in high school. I played baseball. I played football. I was on the chess team. I was a mathlete. I did stuff with the drill team. I had lots of extracurricular. I was in the choir. I was in the Dallas Boys Choir. I think I was probably already not in it by then. I didn't hit puberty until pretty late, so I still had a soprano voice going into my freshman year of high school. 2-a-days was very interesting. Still, sounding looking and sounding like a little boy, because unlike you, who grew really quickly and you were always really big, I was never very big. So I was small and had a high-pitched voice in high school, and on the football field that got taken advantage of a little bit, as you can imagine. So it wasn't anything bad, but making fun of you and calling you a girl or whatever, right?
Right.
And, I remember, I think it was my freshman year. My grandfather had given me shoes and for football to practice in. And he was an umpire, baseball umpire. So they were blue. Umpire shoes were blue. So I wore these for practice because it's not like today where they have all these fancy equipment, all this kind of stuff.
Right.
So it was just for practice, so it didn't matter. But they were blue. So one of my coaches noticed that my shoe, nobody else had blue shoes. Everybody else was black. And somebody noticed the coach noticed my blue shoes and started calling me Elvis because of my blue suede shoes. So that stuck. Yeah, that was interesting. I loved cars, really big into cars and jets. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I had visions of going to the Naval Academy and being a pilot like Top Gun, and fly off of aircraft carriers because I figured that'd be the most difficult. So that's what I always wanted to be. And then I was really good into computers. So back then, the internet was still pretty new, but technology, I'd had a computer from a pretty early age, and I'd always wanted to tinker. So I was always taking old phones apart and looking at the electronics and the circuit board and taking the pieces apart and kind of trying to figure out how everything worked. I was always working on cars, changing the oil or, doing a lift on my car or lowering it, which I lowered my truck when I was 16, as you know, which my dad did not like that at all. But yeah, small town, there wasn't a whole lot to do. So, I was a AB student, honor roll, didn't really get in that much trouble. I did some. My main trouble was being a smart ass. And thinking I was smarter than the teachers, which sometimes maybe I was on a certain topic. But I was 15 and I thought I was smarter than them. And that got me in trouble more than once because I was running my mouth. So,
Right. So what happened to Aaron post high school? So you said Naval Academy, right? Naval aviator. What happened to Aaron that got you here at 47 years old in the cyber industry rather than, a retired fighter pilot?
Sure. My dad was not into me going to the military. My dad was through the generation of Vietnam. And a lot of those guys really were not happy with the way that things were done in the government and how many people were drafted and how many of their friends died over there. So it wasn't a great place. There weren't any wars at that time, but that was after the first Gulf War. So yeah, he definitely did not want me to do that. My parents wanted what they wanted for me more than what I wanted necessarily. They thought they knew best, and they probably did in a lot of ways, but also I felt I needed a little bit of voice. Long story, that led me to going to an engineering school in Longview, Texas, where I got accepted and I was going to be an electrical engineer. I was there for 1 year. I hated it. It was another really small school. Not that it's the reason you go, but you go to college to kind of have experiences as well. This was a super small school. I think there may have been, 400 people in my class. Not much bigger than my high school, honestly. Mm-hmm. And I think there were 4 girls. 4. And only one of them was decently attractive.
Right.
So obviously she was very popular in our college. Mm-hmm. So I worked off campus and made friends outside of the college, and that school just didn't really fit with me. It's a great mm-hmm. school. I learned a lot there. The engineering school was really good in that it's different than a lot of engineering schools that I've seen, in that if you're an electrical engineer at most schools, you just study electrical. In this school, they did engineering with an emphasis in electrical. Mm-hmm. It's a small difference, but I took classes that were mechanical and chemical, and I took laser. I was welding with lasers at 18. I mean, it was really cool. One of my projects my freshman year, we had a group project where we had to build a boat or shoes. I'm sorry, shoes that we had to wear and walk across this pond at our on campus, and we had to use certain materials. So we had to use copper pipe and polyurethane, like plastic tape, mm-hmm. or a material like a tarp, and we could use zip ties and I think duct tape or something. But we had to make it out of just those materials. And then it was an engineering class. You had to calculate how much displacement of water and how much the person weighs it's going to be mm-hmm. in it and like all that kind of stuff. And then you had to walk across the water. It couldn't be propelled or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Ours was one of the few that made it. But it was fun stuff like that. I love doing projects like that. And all the time I was there, I also was working in technology. Even my senior year of high school, the library went from the Dewey Decimal, the old card. I know your audience probably doesn't know what that is, but used to when you went to the library, you went to this Rolodex of, if you were looking up a book, it would be listed by author and title. And you'd look up the author and there'd be a little card and it would tell you where in the library it was. Well, I actually digitized our library and took all of those cards and put barcodes on all the books and mm-hmm. imported and created a computer. I didn't create the computer system. I deployed the computer system. With the barcode scanners and stuff. So from that point, that was kind of my first technology thing. And then I started working in technology. I was really good at it. It was at the time of the internet really blowing up. So technology jobs were all over the place and the needs were there. And there weren't really school degrees. You couldn't go mm-hmm. to school for that. They had like computer science type stuff, which is more programming, but not really the type of stuff that I was working on. So network design and deployment and architecture right. and desktop support and all the things that I used to do and still kind of do. So I just started working and I was making really good money. And so I just continued to do that. I ended up dropping out of school full time, moving back to Dallas, and getting jobs and continuing to grow my career. I was still going to school on the side part time. Mm-hmm. But it was never really a thing I needed for the jobs that I was doing. All they really cared about is my skill set. Could I do the things that they were looking for or that they right. needed? Deploying a network or having good customer service and supporting all this stuff. So I worked at big companies, AT&T. I worked in critical infrastructure. So that's like power plants, mm-hmm. which your grandfather worked in as right. well. He did a different thing in those, but I was really doing it from the technology side. So that's really kind of how I went from, the military. I always had that drive. There's a couple of times in my life 9/11 being one of them, that I went back and was close to signing up and going that path. But something always came up, and for whatever reason, my path went this way, right?
Right.
New job, I got moved to Illinois at one time, and right after 9/11, I ended up taking a job in Illinois, and other things came up. But I always had an affinity and a great respect for military and service in general. So, always felt, especially because I work in critical infrastructure. I know I've said that word quite a few times, but there's something about what I do in technology that it's beyond just a job, right? So the things that I'm doing, I'm trying to focus on protecting our grid, grid that, because we have bad actors, nation states, even Korea, China, Russia, Iran, others that want to, if they were going to attack us, if they were ever going to do a land attack, they would hit our critical infrastructure first. They'd shut down the power. That's a known risk, but that's something that's one of the things that I work to try to protect. Not saying that it's fixed, but it's definitely something that me and a lot of folks are working on to try to make sure that our infrastructure is safe and secure. And then when you turn the light switch on, it actually works.
Right. That's awesome. So, as you said, the great respect for the military, you've always kind of passed that down and instilled that in me ever since I was a little boy. So I've always, even though you weren't in the military, looked up to you as almost somebody that was in the military.
Right.
And you've always put this idea in my head that, we respect the guys who served, obviously you're friends with so many people that have served, Green Berets, MARSOC, Army, Navy, you name it. But I kind of want to dive into the things that you do on the side. So the things you do with Neil, the things you do with Gunny, Omnis, all of that kind of stuff, the new events we got coming up in Staccato, all of the above.
Sure. So all this stuff started back in, 8 years ago or so. I call him Nacho Dad. It was my previous avatar or whatever the heck persona. I was overweight. I'd had 3 kids, you being my first, and I'd gained a lot of weight. I was not super healthy. I'd went to the doctor. I was pre-diabetic. I wasn't super happy in my career, in my job. I had a good job. I had a good career. I was making good money. I was not content in the things that was going on. I was coming home every night and eating ice cream, and
Right.
I didn't have energy to play with you or run down the street or any of that type of stuff, right? So I actually ended up going to an event. It was over the weekend, and I had to pay for it to be there. And the funny thing is I signed up because I thought it was a real estate investing mastermind is what they called it. And it was that. But it was also fitness related and mindset related. We ran 3 miles that morning on the beach. I hadn't ran 3 miles in my life. Other than like football back in high school, but like outside of that, just to run, I hadn't done that. We boxed. Like we put on boxing gloves, they built a ring, and we fought each other. Like literally, legit fought each other. I'd never boxed before. I'd gotten in fights in high school and in my 20s, but not like real boxing, just like a bar brawl or something where you get 1 or 2 punches in and then they break it up, right? Stupid shit. And that made such a lasting impression to me, and it changed the direction of my life in so many ways. The way that your mom and I parented, how we approach things, like what I went after in my career as well as in my personal life. Obviously I changed who I am as a man, who I am as a father, who I am as a husband. All those things changed because of this direction. The books that I was reading, how I was meditating, I was taking care of, I was exercising, I was eating differently, like. All these things changed because of these little nuggets that these coaches gave us. And it's funny, as a grown-up, a lot of times, and a lot of people I've talked with, they don't think they need a coach, or they look like a coach is something, because you usually have to pay for a coach. Coaches aren't cheap. They're not free, but you're paying for that knowledge of how that they got there and how you can do it quicker. It's really easy. You have a coach. You have multiple coaches, right? You have a jiu-jitsu coach, right? we pay for those. Why do we pay for those? Because yeah, you could figure it out on your own, but how long would it take you to figure it out on your own versus if you can go to Cam and say, hey, Cam, can you coach me for this next thing? How much quicker can you get better, right? You're going to exponentially improve because you're working with somebody that's an expert and can show you. And they don't even have to be, in that example, they don't even have to be a black belt. Like
Right.
you also learn from Lauren and other people that are blue belts and purple belts, and they all can teach you things. So it doesn't mean that you have to be the grandmaster to be able to be a coach. It just means you have to be a few steps down the road from the person that you're coaching, and that you can have something you can provide. And you saw that firsthand when we went to Staccato.
Right.
And you had guys from the gym, the jiu-jitsu gym, that outrank you in jiu-jitsu, and they've been doing it a lot longer, and they're grown men, and they're way better at jiu-jitsu than you or I am.
Right.
Yet at Staccato on the firing range, you were better than them, and you could help them, and you could show them things. And you're 15 and they're 30. Some of them, in their 20s or 30s, right? It just goes to show if you're willing to learn, you can learn from just about anybody, and everybody has something they can teach. So that's something that kind of spurred me into this. So that was the caveat or the thing that spurred and sparked the interest in this. And since then, I've been part of multiple masterminds and hired many coaches from relationship coaches for your mom and I and our marriage, from men's coaches to help me with everything from fitness to business to improving in public speaking and so many things. And again, why would I hire a coach, or why would I do that? It's to be able, because I want to do it faster. Like I can go read a book. I've read 1,000 books, especially since this. And that was the other thing that kind of spurred this was during this process, we started reading, I started reading books. I was never a reader as a kid. I never enjoyed reading. I remember I was in advanced English in high school, and one of the books I got assigned was Anna Karenina, which is from Tolstoy, and it's a Russian written book, and it's like this thick.
Yeah.
And it was like reading directions on the back of a magazine or something. Like it was really, really dry for me. And it was really hard to get through. But now I read all the time. Like I read every book I can get my hand on, and some of them are personal improvement. Some of them are biographies. They're military history. They're, you name it, mindset stuff, like lots of different things. But my goal is always just to get a nugget. Like, what can I learn and I can maybe implement into my life. So with all of that said, I know it's kind of a roundabout with the original question. Sorry. All that's to say is I wanted to do more. So I've been part of other groups, and I've been leaders in other people's groups. And I really feel called, going back to that service, that I think that same fire is why I have such an affinity towards people who have served, men and women who have served our country and stood up. One of my favorite sayings is, evil prevails when good men do nothing. And to me, that means if you see a problem, fix it, right? Who am I? I'm nobody. I'm just Aaron Crow, right? But I know I can help men, and I do. I do all the time. Just living your life and showing up and being a man of integrity, showing up and living your life by a code, and being somebody that people can depend on, and being somebody that people will call on, and know that, hey, if I call Aaron, I know he's going to answer, he's going to respond. And I know if he gives me his word, that means something, right? Those core beliefs for me are something that I can help other men grow in. And I think so many men have that code, and maybe they've let the fire die on some of those areas. So I've started an organization called Omnis Rising with Neil. Before that, I was doing it on my own under a name, Tactical Manhood. The same concept. It's just a matter of building an organization and a brotherhood of a place that men can come together. I see a lot of times men have friends that they go drink beer with, they go watch a movie with, they go, maybe not watch a movie, go watch a football game with, or they play golf or all that kind of stuff. But you see it in movies and things, and like, well, how's Bob? Well, I don't know. We played golf today. He seemed fine. Like, you don't talk that level of detail. I have my Tactical Manhood group call that we have every Friday morning. Like, every man that's been on that call has cried. Every man that's been on there has talked about everything from child abuse to troubles in their marriage to financial heartaches to any number of things, right? You name the bad thing that's been there. You did it. You went on an event with us on the rig, and you were the only young man, non-adult on the group where there were 15 men,
Something like that.
and a lot of that event was bringing up and talking about things that they're struggling with. And you heard men that talked about a lot of stuff. Again,
Right.
child, molestation and sex addicts and alcoholism and drug abuse and infidelity in their marriages and all sorts of things. There's a reason why I brought you on that, and I've had this conversation with you, but there's a reason I brought you there, right? Is I feel it's important that you experience that and you be around those things. So it should not be uncomfortable to talk about things, right? Not that you want to go air your dirty laundry publicly and post it on Facebook or, put a sign out front, but you need to have trusted advisors that you can bring stuff like that to. And sometimes it's going to be me for you, as your dad, hopefully. But then I'm sure there's going to be times, and probably already is, where you don't feel comfortable to share something with me. And that's okay. But you need to have other men that you do. And obviously that's why I surround you with Gunny and Neil and Matt and all of these guys. And there's a reason why I have these relationships. And it's for me, of course, but it's also for you, and it's for Tyler, and it's for Sydney, and it's for your mom. Because I know good and well if your mom needed something and I wasn't here, she could call any one of them and they would respond.
Right.
And that's the entire principle around Omnis Rising, is that we build this brotherhood. And if you need an accountant, you've got one in the group. If you need somebody to help you move a couch, like I'm at the age where I don't really ever need that, but I'm going to hire somebody to do that. But whatever that is, if I need help because I'm struggling, like my buddy called me yesterday and he's in the process of moving, and him and his ex-wife are separate or divorced, and his daughter is with his ex-wife, and being apart from her is hard.
Right.
And he's struggling with that. And so that's something he's sharing, and we haven't talked too much about it yet. I'm sure we will probably tomorrow, but the point is that he's reaching out and sharing that stuff. That stuff is super important, and you don't hear men talk about that a lot. Pretending that you're tough and that nothing's wrong is not the answer. I again, as you know, never served. I know a lot of men that have served and have struggled with PTSD and a lot of things, your uncle and many others, right? And I think part of that, and again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not pretending to be, but a lot of the research I've done, a lot of the people that I've heard talk about these things and what I've experienced personally, because everybody has some form of trauma in their life. The less that you talk about it and the more that you hide it and you cover it up and you ignore it, the worse it is, right? So the more that you can talk about those things and bring it out in the public, not necessarily, again, publicly on Facebook, it's just a matter of getting it out of you. Don't keep it built up. So all these events that we do are to build brotherhood. It's to build connections. Neil and I say all the time that you do business at the speed of trust. So the faster that you can trust someone, like you trust me. So if I ask you to do something or I tell you to do something, if a bad guy comes in the front door and I say, Charlie, go do this, I want you to just go do it and not say why. Right? Because we've built that trust, and you can tell in the tone of my voice and what's going on in the situation that you're just going to fucking respond and react and go do it, instead of saying, well, you see it in the horror movies, like, but why do I have to go do that? Like, just do it. Like, I'm the expert here, or I'm at least the most competent one. Just do what I'm asking you to do. Right. Please. And thank you. Now go get it done. So, that's the intention of the group is to build that and to build a future where you have a society of men that are worthy of standing shoulder to shoulder with. Like, I know your goal is to go be a Green Beret in the Army. I see other kids your age and younger and older, and I don't know how many of them have that leadership and that example given to them, and that their fathers are portraying on them. Betraying, it's not what I meant. They're not betraying them. Maybe they're betraying them if they don't do it. But, having that as that next step, so that this next society continues to grow and run in this country that we love and that we live in, has leaders that can step up. And it's not just, the worst of the things that we see on the news. And I'm not trying to talk left or right. It's both sides have, the media is crap. And the message, if you watch the news, you should be scared to walk out of your house. But we interact with people, and I interact with people from both sides of the political party. And when I'm sitting down having a man-to-man or man-to-woman conversation, they're people.
Right.
We're really not that far off most of the time. Like, sure, there's a lot of different things that we won't agree on certain topics. But all in all, I can see them as a person.
Right.
And once you get to that point and say, okay, I don't agree with you on this, but I'm not attached to your idea, or I'm not attached to my idea. Let's set that aside. Can we be good people to each other? Can we see past that? And let's just not talk about that if that's going to trigger us, right? So
I think the whole barrier of the screen here, right, kind of makes people not understand like how another person is on the other side of the screen. So I can sit here and get on Twitch or YouTube or TikTok or whatever the platform is and be like, I don't like this person because this person did this and he's a piece of shit and I hate this guy, right? If he were to sit down in front of him, right, like Logan Paul and Mike Tyson,
sure,
I don't know how real that beef was. Right. I don't know if it was all for the money or not. Seemed like they hated each other over the internet, right?
Right.
They sit down in front of each other and they talk to each other man to man.
Right.
There's no fighting. There's no arguing. It's just two dudes talking to each other, right? And I think a lot of the times people don't realize until they get into a situation where like, this is another human being I'm talking to.
Right.
Like, I'm not just talking to some wall, like a painting. Like I'm not talking about somebody. I'm talking to somebody.
Right.
They're seeing these videos. Right. And I'm not the one to, defend people's feelings. Like I really don't care if your feelings get hurt. Like I'm going to say what I think. Right. But I think you also kind of have to think about what you're saying, especially whenever you have this thing that is the internet, and what you say is forever saved in the archives of absolutely everything, as you know. But kind of sidetracking from that, we had the Staccato event, right?
Yep.
What was it, a month ago?
Yeah, about.
So we had a bunch of dudes out there. We were shooting all the Staccato pistols, which was fucking awesome. Had the helicopter out, shot out of the helicopter. Had a little bit of a fireside chat with the cigars and the beer and everything, right? So
to be clear, he was not drinking or smoking.
Right?
But,
that's just watching.
I wasn't either, actually.
Yeah, 75 hard. What is it? The sixth time?
Yeah, I think it's the sixth time. Yeah.
Which that's amazing, just in and of itself. And you've done phase one, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that's
I've gone through all three phases.
That's a little bit different for anybody that doesn't know. There's 75 hard, and then there's phase 1, 2, and 3. So 1, 2, and 3 are a little bit shorter than 75 days, and they have a little bit different rules, like cold showers are mandatory and whatnot. But the baseline is working out and no drinking, pretty much 2 workouts a day. You could look it up. 75 hard, pretty easy. But so what are obviously we got the event coming up in January.
Yep.
For the all the techie guys, right? The CISOs, the CEOs, everybody. We got SpyCloud coming out. After that, what are your goals after that? Where do you want to take Omnis and these Staccato events, and where else do you want to go with that?
One of the reasons we do events is because that's how men bond, right? Women can bond over coffee, shopping, and they're very easy to open up, or easier than men, or not necessarily easier. Easier is probably not the right word. It's just different. They connect on different like channels and different ways. For men, we have to. In my experience, I'm sure some men don't experience it this way, but most men experience it with action. When I'm doing something. It doesn't have to be shooting guns. Like that, there's a reason why men play football and they play golf and they play pickup basketball.
Call of Duty.
Yeah. Whatever it is, you're doing something together, right? But when you're doing it together in the same room or at the same place, you're able to break down barriers. You get more comfortable with somebody. That whole speed at or you go as fast as the speed of trust. As you build that trust with someone, then you start opening up. You start it can become, if you foster, and it's the right environment. Because there's a lot of men that just play golf and they don't know anything about the other person, and they don't ever
Right.
talk about their struggles in their marriage or the struggles in their finances or their struggles with porn addiction or any of that type of stuff. And that's not what we want. Like, we're not just doing this to do events. Events are fun. The Staccato event was epic.
Awesome.
All the events I've done are epic. I've drove drift cars in Tokyo with, professional drift car drivers from Australia. That's a whole nother story. The rig event that we were, 40 miles off the coast of North Carolina for days, 100 feet off the ground, off the water with, you couldn't see land in any direction, right? And we slept on the the helipad, right? The Staccato event where we're shooting pistols and high level pistols with awesome instructors, and shooting out of a helicopter, and hanging out around the campfire, smoking cigars, and guys are drinking whatever, right? But all that is for a purpose. All that is to build those connections. So to your question, is the intention is to do these events, and the entire intention of those events is to build a community,
Right.
Build a brotherhood, build a connection, a place that men can come to where they can find the other. And what I mean by that is, I don't have very many friends that live right here.
Right.
Why is that? It's not because I don't like people. I'm friendly with people. I am friends with people. Like, our next door neighbor's really cool, and other people are really cool. But not everybody do I connect with on a certain level. Part of that is because of just who I am and what I do, and it triggers people because I like guns, and I do 75 hard, and I don't drink. And not that I don't ever drink. There's alcohol right there, but
Right.
Obviously when I'm on 75 hard, I'm not drinking. And a lot of people, their entire social life revolves around drinking, so they can't imagine not drinking for 75 days. And even when I'm not on 75 hard, your mom and I just really don't drink that much. I enjoy it. We just don't do it that often. Part of that's probably because I don't have a lot of friends locally. But ultimately it's because I don't like the way I feel. In the moment it's fine, but then the recovery is crap, and I care more about my fitness and my health than that. So, all that to say, just building up this community so that we do more events, we bring more men into this thing, so that we can bestow this knowledge and this capability and this understanding, and build this community of men, young men, et cetera, to make it be a service to our community, to our country, to the world, right?
Right.
Everybody can make a change. Everybody could be a difference maker in the world. You can, I can, Tyler, Sydney, like everybody can. You just have to believe in something and be intentional about it, right? And be committed, and have a purpose that's beyond just you, right?
Right.
Obviously it's a business, and obviously we charge money for things because it costs things. And yes, the intention is to be a profitable business or it goes away. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
At the same time, provide super high level value, right? And if you do that, then it doesn't matter that, I went on to the event, the very first event I did, and the thing in Tokyo, all those things cost me money, and I got so much value out of them. And it was awesome. The epic experience. And again, going to Tokyo, like I've been to
awesome.
Tokyo, right? And drove drift cars in the mountains of, freaking Tokyo.
Just like Fast and Furious.
Yeah, it's like where all the drifting stuff started, at this track called Ebisu. So look that up. It's they've got like 10 different types of tracks. There's a road track and all these different things, and you have to buy a car. And again, nobody speaks English. They're all Japanese, and you're literally drifting around the corner, like hanging off the edge of a cliff.
Yeah.
In the mountains, it was freaking epic. And there was also a lot of bad stuff that happened that I won't get into. We don't have time for, but not bad, but just things didn't go as
Unplanned.
planned. Yeah. So we had to adjust, and it was kind of a shady thing with the guy that put it on, and all that kind of stuff. So all those things helped me to learn how to do a better event, and how to do be really epic, but also not have the downside of things. And every one of these we do an AAR, like after action review, like even this last Staccato event. Like, what did we do well? What did we struggle with? How can we do it better next time? How can
Back
we be more
porch of
efficient?
the Airbnb.
Exactly. With a little conspiracy theory in there when you get too many Marines together in the same room.
They kind of just,
And I was stuck in a house with, Neil and Bova. Yeah, there were like 5 Marines.
Yeah, well, Kevin was Army, so we
that's
had
right.
a little bit of a buffer. And then the 2 civilians kind of
Yeah.
stopped the chaos. I think if we had have left, the house would have burned down.
Probably so, yeah.
Somebody would have drank Gunny's Guinness, right? Which I got framed for somehow.
Yeah.
But I didn't drink a drop. But kind of looping back to the childhood, if you had a time machine and you could go back to whatever age, Aaron, 15-year-old Aaron, 16, 17, doesn't matter, whatever age you pick. But what advice, one piece of advice would you give him and why?
It's tough. The biggest thing I think I would say is be comfortable in who you are, right? And find your voice, find your purpose, and don't let other people stray you.
Right.
Everybody wants to tell you what they think you should do, from your parents to your boss to your, and sometimes you have to do them. Like I was going to college, my parents were paying for it. So if I wanted their money, I had to go to their college. So that's why I went 1 year. And then after that, I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. And there were strings attached. If you don't go there, then you don't get our money. Okay. So I left. And it was the best thing probably that could have happened to me, because it took me down this path. I wouldn't change anything in my life, but it's the learning earlier on that I have a voice in my life, right? And it's, I tell you this all the time, like, hey, I want you to have the skill set that when you walk out of my house, you are on your own, right? Not that I'm always here for you. You can always call me. I'll always come help. I'm always available, but I want you to do what you want to do. Like, I didn't push you to go have interest in the Army or a Green Beret or any of that type of stuff. Like, yes, I've enabled this fire for you to have a respect for it, but at no time it's hey, you should really go to Green Beret, or you should do this. Like, I want you to do what you want to do. And if that changes in 2 years, that's okay. In my life, things have changed many times. I've been a real estate agent. I've ran REO and bank-owned foreclosures. I thought about being a chef at one time. I was going to go, obviously, the military multiple different times. At one time, I was wanting to be a pilot. I considered going and just being a Marine. There's a lot of different things that I considered in my life. Some of them I tried and I wasn't good at them. Some of them I was good and didn't like real estate. I've had my real estate license since 2006. I don't really enjoy it, though. I was good at it. I made good money at it. I despised it because it didn't push me intellectually, and I just really didn't enjoy it. People are really bad. Most agents are awful. Right. So that would be my advice: is just to be comfortable being yourself and standing up for yourself. Right. Have your voice, and don't let other people sway you.
Yeah. So you tell me that a lot. You also tell Tyler and Sydney, my brother and sister, a lot, because it seems like not even just us, but people in general kind of look at other people for reference. So they'll be doing their own thing, right? And then they'll be like, "Oh, look at Tim Kennedy. Look what he's doing. Let's follow along with him." Which that's not necessarily a bad thing. No. Tim does awesome shit all the time. Sure. But they kind of take the things that they want to do and they base it on what other people are doing, right? And if I were to do that, then I have no idea what I would be, because I'm sure there's a lot of guys out there who want to do similar things to me, but in my area, I don't know if I could even find one, right? And it used to be this big thing, especially back in your generation, that was like everybody was either going to play football or they were going to be in the military or they were going to be, like a millionaire or something like that, right? Like a police officer, and they were going to stay in their hometown for the rest of their life. But at this point, with the internet, you can just be a Twitch streamer and live in your mommy's basement, right? Or, make little YouTube videos and make all this money, right? And nobody is forced to struggle anymore, right? You can. It's optional. Yeah. You can go be a Green Beret. You can go be a MARSOC Raider or a SEAL, or go through college and become a doctor, whatever your struggle is. I'm not saying your struggle is the only way you can struggle as a military, right? There's so many things that you can struggle with. That was just to list a few. But back in your day, you couldn't just take a video of you playing video games and post it on YouTube, right? You couldn't just, walk around with your phone on Twitch and, go to the store and do the live walkthroughs or whatever, right? You can't just make videos talking about stuff. which a lot of people now, they make money from like people taking photos of them, like Instagram models or whatever, right?
Yeah.
They don't have to struggle for anything anymore.
Yeah.
And I think it softens people, and it softens generations of people, right? Because it went from, you know, your generation, Papa's generation, everybody through that lineage, everybody had to struggle. You know, Papa grew up poor, living in a house, like a small house, not much bigger than this room, right? With like 12 people sleeping on the floor with
And
no
no
air
air
conditioning
conditioning,
in the
yeah.
middle of Texas. For those of you that live in Texas, I don't think you would ever want to live without air conditioning in Texas. If your
wouldn't
air
want-
conditioning has ever gone out in Texas, you would know the struggle of that, right? But now, especially with these content creators that have never struggled before, they just don't know how to overcome things, right? They are faced with a challenge, and they kind of just go around it, right, and avoid it. They don't know how to leap over it and pass through it, right? So there's guys, obviously, you know, Tim Kennedy's got a YouTube channel. He's doing a bunch of stuff with that now, but he had things prior that he struggled with,
Right.
right? So one of the things I wanted to ask you is, if you want to be a Twitch streamer, great. If you want to be a content creator, great. How can you make your life harder, right? What things can you do that will make your life more difficult, a little bit more struggle in your life, so you have these skills of, you know, fitness, exercise, critical mind thinking, right?
Yeah.
What things what things would you suggest to somebody to do to maybe make their lives a little bit more difficult and give them a little more skills?
Struggle is good. You learn more from failure than you do from success. You know, losing your jiu-jitsu tournament teaches you a lot more than winning, right? It's a lot more fun to win. But in life, losses are where you really learn. You either win or learn, right? So for that question, it probably would start out with obviously physical,
75 hard or whatever.
or whatever, right? You know, wherever you are. Like, again, I was Nacho Dad. I don't know if I said it, but, you know, I was 350 pounds, right? I'm a big guy, but I was 350 pounds. I was morbidly obese. You know,
Pre-diabetic.
Pre-diabetic. I had, I think, a size 54 pant or something like that, waist. And, you know, I've been fat, right? And I started from there, and I lost weight, and I started exercising, and, you know, I've just put in my numbers today. I've done 850 something miles rucking.
That's awesome.
This year. You know, I didn't start with that, right? I didn't start with 65 pounds. I started with 20, I think. I'm not exactly sure, but something like that. 20 pounds, maybe 10. I don't remember, but that was a long time ago. But just start where you are, right? And when you see the easy path and the hard path, choose a hard path, right? You know, just like when we were setting all this up, I'm like, you just got to be able to figure it out. You got to be able to struggle through it, and instead of throwing your hands up and saying, I can't do it, and going and getting somebody else. Not that you can't ask for help, but it's part of the reason why we have you in the school that we do, right? Is to make you figure things out, because eventually one day I'm not going to be there for whatever reason. You go to the military, you're going to be overseas. You're not going to have me to, you can't call me, right? You may not be able to, your comms may not work. You may not be able to call your commander, right? You're going to have to figure it out, right? They need soldiers that can figure things out, and they can be intelligent, and you don't want just a grunt. Like, I know we make fun of our Marine Corps friends and the crayon eating, right?
Right.
But at the same time, they want smart Marines. They want men that can do the job, and they don't have to micromanage and tell you, okay, yeah, you killed the one guy, but you left the other guy alive. Like, go kill him too, right?
Right.
Or, you know, go save them. Whatever the answer is. It's not always killing, but, you know, it's finding things for you, like being a Twitch streamer or getting paid to be a podcast or any of that type of stuff. I do computers, right? So I've worked with my hands behind a computer screen in a basement most of my career. But at the same time, I was constantly learning. I was constantly reading books. I had stacks of technology books that I would go get and read them. And I found this place that would sell the previous version. So every year they'd release a new version. Well, then the old version they'd basically throw them away. So I'd go buy them for $1. Now these are like $200, $300, $400 books normally.
Right.
So I'd go to this place and I'd buy 50 books, and I would have them on my shelf, and I wouldn't necessarily read cover to cover, But I would have them and I'd read through them. So when a problem would come up, I'd have almost like a library, a reference.
Right.
Because again, this is before all of the data that is available today on the internet.
couldn't
Where you
just
Google it.
Yeah.
That stuff wasn't available, at least not this technical type of stuff, right? There were some things that you could do, but like now, if you need something, hey, I need to change, my brakes on my car, you put in 1994, Ford Escort brake change, and somebody's got a YouTube video walking you through every step of how to do it, right? That didn't exist back then, right? You had to buy books that had all that knowledge.
Owner's manual or whatever.
So find something that you can do that makes you, if you're going to be a janitor, be the best fucking janitor in the world.
Right.
Like, be the best Twitch streamer. Like, continue to improve your craft. Why is Mr. Beast so great at it? It's not just because his videos are the best videos, which they are, but he's figured out the science and the automation and the things behind the scenes.
Right.
That he knows exactly what videos to make. He knows before he makes the video that the video is going to be good.
Right.
And that it's going good being, I'm going to get this many views on it,
Right.
right? It's going to make me money,
Make
right?
this much money or whatever.
Otherwise, he's not doing it. Now, that doesn't mean every one he does hits. I'm sure he has some that don't. But now he's built this thing up, and if you also see him, he's diversifying. He has chocolate, and he has all these other things.
The new Lunchables coming out.
Lunchables and burgers and all this stuff that he has, right? We talked this weekend about Shaquille O'Neal and how,
His
and one's shoes and real estate and, versus
Fortnite.
Versus the guy movies. He's been in really bad movies, but he was in movies too.
He did it.
He made money in it, right? So it's about pushing yourself in areas that you suck at. Like, it's one of the things I tell you all the time is it's easy to focus on things you're good at, right? So when you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu, it's easy to go to jiu-jitsu. The hardest day of jiu-jitsu is walking in day one when you don't know anything.
Right.
That is the most terrifying day. And for me, it's almost like every 2 or 3 weeks for me.
You come back.
Because I'll come back because I'll be traveling and I won't be able to make it. So it's like, it's been 3 weeks. It's been 4 weeks. Sometimes it's been 6 weeks. And I go back in and all of you guys have been going 3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah.
And I haven't gone at all for months. And I haven't gone at all. So every time I walk back in, it's almost like I'm a brand new guy. Half the people I don't know, they're like, who's this new guy? I'm like, well, actually, I'm not new, but whatever.
Yeah.
I'm
that guy's dad.
I'm that guy's dad. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for about 5 years, but I'm still a white belt. So
Right. Yeah, I mean, just a quick shout out to Henzo Gracie. The dudes up there are just fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Gabe, Cameron, David.
Yeah.
All of the black belts we got up there coming out and supporting at the competition. Lauren, all the dudes. I think one of the things that people also get stuck up in is they find themselves without a purpose.
Yep.
I have a specific friend that I used to hang out with a lot that doesn't really have a purpose, and you know who I'm talking about, right? He just kind of played Call of Duty, right? And that's a purpose.
Sure.
At this young age, it can be a purpose. But a lot of kids, like that guy from Canada, his parents run his Instagram or whatever, he's doing jiu-jitsu, all of the different Muay Thai, boxing, everything, competing like every weekend.
Yeah.
He has a purpose.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu and fighting and MMA or whatever is his purpose, right? A lot of people find themselves going through high school, right? Getting all A's or whatever. Getting through high school and finding themselves without a purpose, right? They're school smart and they're book smart, but they're not street smart.
Right.
They don't know what to do with this knowledge that they have in their head, right? So a lot of times people will end up homeless or low on money or working at McDonald's flipping burgers because they don't have a purpose. And I think I kind of want to cover kind of how you can find your purpose, right? Because a lot of people think, oh, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that, right? So you started out jiu-jitsu 5 years ago, right? So what have you seen in your training that has brought you to where you are now, right? Because you're still a white belt, but you fucking crush dudes, right? You're super strong, but you crush dudes, right? So when you start getting into that mindset where, oh, I don't want to train anymore. Oh, this is boring. Oh, I'm not good at this. How do you get over that in your head, right? And push through and just keep going.
Yeah. For me, it's been, I've had mentors, I've had coaches, I've read great books. I get that inner David Goggins voice in my head that tells me to quit being a bitch. The biggest thing I can say is to do things that you suck at. Like be okay sucking. And go after it. If you're not doing something that you're not very good at, then you're not growing, right? You should constantly be in a room. If you're in the, another way to say it is, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Right.
Now, that's not always true because sometimes you're going to be the smartest guy in the room. But if you're only in rooms where you're the smartest person in the room, that's where it's a problem, right? So there are rooms that I'm the smartest guy in the room. Right. There's also rooms that I'm not the smartest guy in the room by a magnitude of 100, right? And that's where I want to be because I want those guys to be teaching. And smart is relative. It's jujitsu strength, smartness. It's tactical shooting, right? Whatever it is. And you've seen me. I walk into every one of those situations, with Gunny and shooting. Like he shot way more than me. And Bova and all these freaking MARSOC guys and Navy SEALs and all these people that I hang out with. Why would I not want them to give me a pointer, right?
Ben.
Right. Ben, who's not a military guy, but is probably one of the better shooters out of anyone that we've been around because he's just good. So as I walk in, I can walk in with an ego, and there's a lot of people that we know, and we don't have to name names, but that are, well, I think I'm better than that, or they're unwilling to let their ego down to let somebody else help them and show them, because most people want to help.
Right.
Ben, Gunny, all those guys, they are more than willing to help. They will put down anything they have. Gunny would get in his car right now if you called him and come up here. He's 4 hours away, but he'd do it without question, without hesitation, right now. He would also help you shoot or anything that you need. Having that skill set is very important. And that skill set I'm talking about is letting go of your ego and being willing to. And sometimes for you, I've had to push you because you don't want to do it. And I'm like, nope, you're good. You're going. And then you get into it and you're like, okay,
I like this.
Yeah, I like this. Fun. Right. But you won't know. Like you've got to try new things and you're not going to love them all. That doesn't mean you continue to do them because you hate them. No. But Apogee was a great example of that, right?
Right.
In the beginning of Apogee, you didn't want to do it and you were complaining to your mom and your mom didn't want you to do it. And I'm just like, I don't care.
Right.
I told Tyler the other day because he's like, well, I don't really like jujitsu. I'm like, I don't care.
Right.
You're doing it. Like when you get out of the house and if you still don't like jujitsu, but the difference is I know he does like jujitsu because when he's there, I can see it in his eyes. I can see the smile on his face. He's always fun and laughing and enjoying it. He'd just rather stay at home. And I get that. Like we all feel that way. Right. Every morning when I wake up in the morning, I don't want to go ruck. I'm up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I go throw my ruck on and I do it. But I don't want to. The inner voice is telling me, go back to sleep, lay down, get a coffee, relax. You've done it 850 miles already this year. You don't have to do any more. Like, just stop. Like, nobody will know. Like, you're on 75 hard, but nobody's going to know if you do it or not. You can just check the box. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
It's not about that. I know, right? So, really the answer is just continuing to find things that you suck at. Be willing to go take a cooking class. Like, maybe you'll like it. Like go dance, like go do public speaking, go do anything in the world that comes up that you see and that like, I've never tried that. Go try it, right? Try the food, try the drink, try the restaurant, try the dancing, the whatever the thing is that you're going to suck at it. It's okay. Everybody that's ever done it sucked at it.
Right.
It's still fun. Like be okay to laugh at yourself. I looked really bad doing that. I really suck at dancing. Yeah. I get tapped every week at jiu-jitsu. Every time I go there, I get tapped.
Likewise.
But I also tap people, right? And that's okay. But I don't expect to go in there and be a black belt. Like, I'm not putting in that level, and that's not my goal. Your goal is different than my goal in jiu-jitsu. My goal in jiu-jitsu is to maintain fitness, to improve my game. Again, for me, it's more about learning, right? It's about growing. It's about continuing to pursue something I'm not good at and get better because it's cerebral, right? It's mental. It's doing something that I don't want to do sometimes, and it pushes me to let go of my ego in that space. Plus, one of the harder things that you do, but it's amazing when you're doing
Super fun.
It's super fun. Like, and after, like, my knees hurting and my chin hurts from being choked out, and
But it's awesome.
I had a black eye because you need me in the face, and all this stuff happens. But it's still fun and awesome too. And it can be that for, again, I was in the boys choir. I was on the chess club. Like, I think that's one of the benefits I'm appreciative of my family and my parents in their raising. I didn't always want to do it.
Right.
My dad pushed me to do a lot of things. And I'm glad for that, because it gave me the work ethic. It gave me the ability to walk into something and try it and be okay sucking at it. Right. I was never the best athlete in the world. I was never the biggest. I was always small, so I was never the biggest kid.
Right.
I was, like, when I did choir, I was the best kid, the best soprano on the thing. Right. I was the soprano, but that's because I hadn't hit puberty yet. So
Right. So, kind of wanted to touch on the jiu-jitsu a little bit. So a lot of people, I'm sure, when they're getting into it, is like, oh, this is a physical thing. I can't really do physical stuff, right? I don't really like the physical things. And what I've seen from the people in jiu-jitsu, like Lauren and Michael and Cameron, or Cam as we call him, which he's a future podcast guest, by the way, all three of them are. When we took him out to Staccato and went shooting with them, Cam was the only one that had ever shot before, right? Lauren and Michael grew up in Los Angeles, didn't really shoot, right?
Yeah.
Like skateboarding and all that kind of shit. All the California shit that you could think of, like 90s California high school teenager stuff is what they did. They didn't have a dad like you that took them out to the shooting range, and they didn't have, even if their dad was into that, that wasn't available back then. Like Staccato Ranch or anything like it wasn't a thing, especially not in California, right? So they're brand new to shooting, right? They don't even own firearms. Never shot them, never used them, don't know how. And they were able to just learn how and listen to us teach them without an ego.
Yep.
Because of jiu-jitsu, right?
Yep.
So it's not even like jiu-jitsu will help you with jiu-jitsu and jiu-jitsu only, right? Jiu-jitsu will help you with school. Jiu-jitsu will help you with anything else that anybody's teaching you, right? There's been so many times that, before jiu-jitsu, I would have just shut down and just like shut somebody up and stopped listening to them, right? But since I have been doing jiu-jitsu, I've noticed that I'm a lot more coachable now, right? People like Ben and Gunny teaching me better ways to improve my shooting technique at Staccato, right? Kind of help me do whatever, right? I think jiu-jitsu is probably one of the best sports for that as well. Because, like, you can play football and your coach can, like, teach you how to throw the ball better or, tackle somebody better or run faster. But in the end, for most people, it's just middle school, like me, right? Like 7th and 8th grade, they're in football, middle school, and then after that, they're like, I don't really like football, and it doesn't leave a lifelong impact on them. But jiu-jitsu is one of those things where you can do it no matter what.
Yeah. As
As long as there's a gym, you can train from 10 years old, 4 years old, like the little kids that I used to teach in kids class a while ago, before we switched classes. Those kids are 4 years old, right? And if their parents are building those habits in them, I bet most of them will be doing it until they're 47, like you, or 50. Like those,
At least some of them will, right?
Some of them, right? At least a couple of them.
Yeah.
Like Xavier in the class, right? He loves jiu-jitsu, and he's Tyler's age, 9 years old. Yeah. I guarantee you he'll do jiu-jitsu for most of his life.
Well, and that's a difference with jiu-jitsu is you can do it as an old man, right? You can do it into your 60s, 70s, 80s. Like there's lots of examples that people do jiu-jitsu forever, right? Where you can't play football forever.
No, not
you can
Tom
play golf.
Brady.
You can do some things forever, but MMA fighting, you can't fight him. I mean, even you mentioned Tyson. He's a freak of a person in a good way. He was purpose built to be a boxer.
Muhammad Ali couldn't do it that long.
No, I mean you get brain injuries and traumatic traumatic things happen. And your body breaks down. Jiu-jitsu's slow. I mean, again, the other night I went and my knees hurting and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not down. Right, I can still go.
Right.
Maybe I have to wear a knee brace, or maybe I don't roll as hard. Maybe I just do the class part and I don't do the rolling part. And that's okay. Like that's another thing that is really important in when I was doing CrossFit or when I was doing anything, being okay with saying, hey, I gotta dial it back a little bit.
You got to accept that you're older now.
Well, it's not even that. Just yes, or if I get injured, like I broke my hand at CrossFit, I've broken toes rolling jujitsu, and I can still go in and roll. I just have to say, hey guys, I can't. I'm just going to do the class and learning part, and I'm not going to do the rolling.
Right.
Or if I'm going to do the rolling, hey, I can't
go easy.
I got to go easy. My hands hurt, that kind of thing, right? So it's probably not good for me to roll anyways because you're not going to get the thing. Right? So it's having that open mindset to be willing to suck and be willing to just continue to do things, right?
Right. So this last 5 or so minutes, I kind of just want to have like a loose fire off, right? So just kind of talk about whatever. You can ask me questions. I'll ask you questions, whatever. Just kind of launch back and forth off each other, right? Is there any topics that you would like to cover in the last 5 or so minutes of this podcast?
Why do you want to be in the Army in a Green Beret?
So as you know, my Uncle Tommy, which he's kind of like my third grandfather, is how I consider him because he was just such a massive impact in my life for that year that we hung out with him before he died, right? I've always had a feeling that I needed to coach somebody, right? I've always wanted to help people.
Sure.
Right. And it wasn't always I wanted to help people by, killing bad guys and taking out Taliban. But the Green Beret is a force multiplier, right? Which means they're going out behind enemy lines and they're training locals to fight alongside the Americans and go against the people that are ruining their country, right? So me being a jiu-jitsu coach currently, which it's very low level, right? I'm teaching like 10, 11, 12-year-old kids, right? It's kind of a gateway into that, though. You're teaching them how to use firearms, how to be tactical and not get killed in combat, right? How they should set up their gear, how they should, manipulate their pistol and their rifle, right? But not only that, right? So I've always grown up watching Captain America and all the war movies you've introduced me to, right? I've always looked at the commando, like Rambo, the soldiers, and my branch that I've wanted to be in has changed a lot as well. Like I've looked at MARSOC, I've looked at SEALs. I think partially it's because of guys like Tim and Uncle Tommy that kind of sent me down that just because it's such a heavy influence from them. But at the same time, the mission of the Green Beret just kind of called out to me, right?
Sure.
They're jumping out of airplanes behind enemy lines, taking bad guys out, like that Joe Kent guy on Sean Ryan. Sean Ryan.
Yeah.
It's just everything about them is just so amazing to me, right? I look at the dudes and they've got so much. They have the longest special operations training time out of any spec ops other than Delta Force, right? Like the SEALs, you can make a SEAL in a little bit over a year, under a year, about a year. You can make a Ranger in less than a year, 6 months, whatever. Most infantry guys go through boot camp and they're in their infantry battalion, right? But the Green Beret, it's like 18 to 19 months, right? And then you have to get assigned to your battalion, right? And even before that, before you start training for a Green Beret, you have to make it to a Ranger battalion unless you take 18 X-ray, right? So you have to be in a Ranger bat for at least 3 years before you can even apply to be a Green Beret.
Right.
So it's kind of like once you get to that point, you're getting the best of the best. And that's why Delta Force pulls so many Green Berets to Delta or the unit, because those guys are already some of the best that we have in the U.S. military. Now, I'm not saying that, SEALs suck or MARSOC sucks. They all have their jobs, right? But the Green Beret has always just been this shining star out of other options. But other than that, I'm looking at the weaponry sergeant, because as you know, I'm a little bit of a gun nerd. I'm quite obsessed. I go and grab your staccato off your desk and just fidget with it, right? I'll go and play in the garage with my reloads or whatever. I'm obsessed with all the gear, and there's no other place that you can really do that other than the military, right? Without draining your bank account. Test out all the weaponry sergeant tests out the new firearms and gear and everything like that. Like, where else could I test out experimental military equipment other than in the military before that stuff even comes out? Like what Tim Kennedy's doing right now with the XM7 rifle is just awesome, right? So all of that kind of a long story, kind of a long story is kind of how I got onto the track of wanting to be a Green Beret, right?
It's awesome, man. I dig it.
All right, let's close out.
All right.
Thanks, Ed.
Yeah, man.